Hello and welcome to our program, Where God Weeps, a program where we speak about the situation of the suffering and persecuted church around the world. Today we're coming to you from the home of the Maryknoll Missionary Fathers here in Seoul, South Korea. We're going to be speaking with Father Gerard Hammond, an 84-year-old Maryknoll missionary priest who's been more than 50 times in North Korea. He worries about the people on both sides of the border. To tell us more about the situation of Christians, about the people in North Korea, it's my great privilege to welcome Father Gerard Hammond. Father, welcome to our program and thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Mark. I'm really happy to be here.
Father Gerard, you grew up in an immigrant Irish family in Philadelphia. When did you first know you wanted to be a priest?
Well, the immigrant families, of course, we lived in those row houses and everybody was very close to one another, and it was an Irish and Italian neighborhood. We all went to the same school, but it was the Sisters of Mercy who encouraged the young students, especially we were using mite boxes in those days with the blue and the gold teams and putting in 10 cents or a nickel to buy babies in China. And so they instilled in us a desire to at least think about the church otherwise than in particular in the United States. But eventually I bought a book called Men of Maryknoll, which was selling in a department store. And that's when I first thought, well, maybe I could be a missioner.
Were there challenges along the way? Were there times where you thought, no, this is not my way?
Yes, because I entered the Maryknoll Minor Seminary when I had just turned 14. And, of course, my grandmother was very happy, of course, but my father and mother were not too happy, especially my dad, because he thought it'd be better to go to a regular Catholic high school rather than a minor seminary. So that was my first challenge, to kind of win them over to what I thought I wanted to be. But you have plenty of time. It took 13 years from the time I entered the minor seminary till I was ordained. So you have lots of time to think of what kind of a missioner, what kind of a vocation you would have.
Now you entered a missionary community. The Maryknolls are known for their missionary work around the world, and you were assigned in 1960 to Korea. Was this your choice?
Yes, I was very interested in going to North Korea. The reason is it's a fascinating reason in the sense that during the Korean War, there was a student next to me whose name was John Chang or Chang-ik. He happened to be the son of the South Korean government representative to the UN, who also knew Maryknoll. His father knew Maryknoll, and he came to the minor seminary because he had been in a seminary here in Seoul, but when Seoul fell to the North Koreans, the family had to leave, and he went to the United States, so he entered the minor seminary with me. So he was encouraging me all along, taught me how to play soccer and things like that. So if I may say so, one funny incident, when we brought him home for our first meal, I said to grandmother, well, there's a young lad from Korea coming. And I said, they eat the rice, so prepare some rice. So he was sitting down for lunch. She prepared a huge bowl of rice and nothing else.
Oh, no.
He always reminds me of he had so much rice he didn't know what to do with it. But
a quick question. When you first came to South Korea in 1960, was it to this house, this Maryknoll house where we're in now?
Yes, I studied it took me 3 weeks on a freighter to get here, of course, and landed at Walmido in Incheon Harbor, came here by truck, and studied the language for 4 months in the dining room, and then was assigned to the Diocese of Cheongju, which was a vicariate at that time. And there was a Maryknoll bishop from Brooklyn. Bishop Vincent Party was there. So, and the Maryknollers they called them the retreads because they had come down from North Korea. So that's how I was initiated into North Korea.
Now, when you first went, what was it that struck you most upon your first visit to the north, to North Korea?
The very first thought in my mind was that we went there to take care of humanitarian aid, but also our very first programs were for clothing, to give out clothing and things that they needed at that time. So it was very similar to what I did in South Korea, but at the same time, the conditions, the livelihood of the people was kind of a surprise to me.
Very few people know what it is, the day-to-day. I mean, we have a picture through the media, and particularly the tensions now between North Korea and the rest of the world. But what is it like, the day-to-day life of the people in North Korea? If you can just give us a picture.
Surely, it's a very regimented type of life. Everything is done for the Koreans themselves. Their education, their apartments, getting jobs, everything is fixed on the great leader, the dear leader, and the supreme leader. So it's very authoritarian. So that kind of surprises you. And the people, though, seem to be able to adjust to that type of a situation.
Is there poverty? We hear that there is a population of 22 million. About half live under the poverty line. Do you see this visible poverty when you go to the north?
Yes, it's quite visible. You can see that especially when you go to the countryside. But it's also, you have a spirit of people who understand suffering, and of course, every parcel of land, nothing is wasted. And so when you get into that spirit that they're energetic because they need assistance, though, to survive.
What have they taught you, the North Korean people themselves? You've been there more than 50 times. What have they taught you?
2 things I would say: patience and understanding are the things that I remember the most. And also when I came to South Korea, you think of your own personal life, and I was thinking of, well, what gifts would I have? And I thought, well, I'm kind of a patient person. But then I learned that I didn't have anything like that either. So it's a learning process, and with them, it was the same way.
You've mentioned the Supreme Leader and Dear Leader. The Supreme Leader, if I am not mistaken, refers to Kim Il-sung, the first leader of...
He's known as the Great Leader.
The Great Leader. Well, who is the Supreme Leader?
The Supreme Leader is the present leader of...
Is the present leader.
Kim Jong-un.
Can you give us a little bit of just a breakdown or an understanding of the political structure in North Korea?
Well, he is the supreme leader in the country.
That is now the present president, Kim Jong-un.
Jong-un. And the country runs that way. There's a large number, of course, in the Workers' Party. And you've probably seen so many of the people wearing badges. They must wear those badges all the time. And the badges are of his father and grandfather. He is not on the badges yet. So that reminds the people that everything was done for them. They're told that from the very beginning. So in one sense, he's their God, because he does everything for them.
Is there still the reverence for the great leader? If you were to look at is there rather a greater reverence for the great leader than the supreme leader? How is the relationship between these two figures in the history?
It's certainly fostered, because they have expressions in Korean that the great leader will be with us forever. And they have these pictures, or what we would call shrines, and they're lit up at nighttime even, and they're on every village, major streets, so that the people are reminded of the founder of the country.
In communism in Russia, for example, when Poland and countries that had been, communism had taken over those countries, the fidelity, if you will, to the communist leadership was more or less not a facade, but it was something that wasn't from the people themselves. It was rather imposed upon the people. Would you say that this fidelity to the leadership comes from within the people themselves? Is it genuine, or is it, again, something that has been imposed upon them? And do they understand this?
Well, that's a very interesting question. It's really hard to know whether they do or they don't. Certainly on the surface, they certainly seem very convinced. And all of the symbols, they're reminded of the symbols all the time. And of course, one of the things being there, we never talk about politics with them, because there's an expression in Korean, they call it anbang, the inner room. We are guests in their inner room. And so I feel a guest is not there to challenge the people. And one of the most important things for a missioner is to listen. You often ask yourselves, naturally you go to teach, to bring the gospel, the joy of the gospel. But the most important thing for the missioner is to learn to listen or hear the voices of the poor and the cry of the poor.
I want to come now directly to this point. You work for the Eugene Bell Foundation, or you're rather working with the Eugene Bell Foundation, which is a foundation working particularly in medical and humanitarian aid. If I understand correctly, you are working in the area of drug-resistant tuberculosis. That is, that there are multi-drug resistant tuberculosis which doesn't respond to the drugs that are available. First of all, why is tuberculosis such an issue and such a concern in North Korea?
One of the main reasons, of course, is malnutrition, overwork, and it's airborne. But not only in North Korea, tuberculosis is throughout the world. And drug resistance is the same thing. Why would drug resistance be more, say, in Korea? One reason is, if you take ordinary TB medicine, you feel better. The urge is, since it's a short supply, is to give it to someone else. But then you become drug resistant, and the medicine you've given out, close contact, you've made two people who have drug-resistant tuberculosis. And so the government, the Ministry of Public Health, asks Eugene Bell to focus not only on what we call regular TB, but drug resistance, because WHO sends an awful lot of medicine to Korea for ordinary tuberculosis, but no one is interested in the multi-drug resistant TB.
What would a typical mission for you? You've been now 50 times to North Korea, or more than 50 times to North Korea. What would a typical mission, medical mission, look like for you? What would it entail?
Well, first it's the preparation. If you're going to be taking medication for 2,000 people, you have to think of 5 months in advance, because you give them 5 months supply of medication plus nutrition for each individual. So getting prepared at even is a strenuous and difficult
logistically.
Then it has to be shipped. And then it's usually shipped to China, reshipped then to North Korea, to the port city of Nampo, then to go through customs. So there's an awful logistic part. Plus, if you have 12 centers, you have to know where the medicine is going to the 12 centers. So you need trucks, we also have tractors and microscopes, X-ray machines.
So the medical equipment as well.
As well.
And you yourself, you are responsible for collecting sputum, is that correct?
Sputum, yes.
So you would be working with patients and with nurses to collect this information.
Well, the sputum, we have 2 vials, of course. One, when new patients arrive, of course, they're very tense because they know that they have to be a part of the project because there's no other medicine. So they're desperate we try to get there before 9 o'clock. We have to do it outside because it's so highly contagious. So they have to spit into this vial. It has a blue cap on it. And another one to be analyzed also. They're analyzed with this gene expert machines. Within 2 hours, you know whether the person has multi-drug resistant TB or not. But also, they have to take an X-ray. So it's very tense for them. Some get so tense that they feel, I can't elicit any sputum. And to a doctor, maybe in the United States, it would be strange. They'll look at me and say, Father, I can get some sputum if I smoke. And of course you think, well, smoke's going to ruin their lungs already, you know. But of course, they have a puff of cigarette, and sure enough, it brings up the sputum.
Father, you've been working now, I believe, with about over 250,000 patients over the time that you've been working in North Korea. Does it feel like so many after all these years? How is it? Is it like for you when you go back again, is it like greeting friends? Or
It is, yes. And even this time, because it's such a tense situation, I was wondering just how they would greet us or what would they say. And our guide said, thanks for coming. And the patients that you're meeting them at least 3 times during their treatment, because it takes 18 months to cure one patient, that they'll always say, thanks for giving me life, and thanks for giving me hope. So they understand that you're there purely to help them.
Father, 80% recover after the treatment, but there's the 20% who don't recover. Is there something that you can do for these people in terms of palliative care?
Yes, it's always been my dream. And last August, when I was awarded the Gaudi Mitzvah Award, the Knights of Columbus gave me an honorific of $100,000. And I'm using that now to build wards for the patients that are not cured.
A hospice.
A hospice. Though we don't use the word hospice, we use it because it's not a word it's a sensitive type of word. It's those who need more care. It's psychologically better for them to realize that. So now, when I was up there this last time, we've already finished 10 places which will take care of 50 people at least. And we'll be making each trip more places for them to stay.
And they'll be run by the local people?
Yes. All the North Korean doctors and sisters remain in these care centers.
Do they know you're a priest?
Yes, very much so, because when we first come to Korea, we're given a Korean name. And my name is Ham. Jae-do is the middle name. And they know that I'm a priest. They add priest to it. Though at first they called me comrade. But now our guides call us by our father And so the patients know us. Whether they know what a priest is or not, that I'm not sure.
Do they understand you're a man of God, and what is their understanding of a man of God and God?
I would say quite limited in one sense, because it's been 70 years since there's been a resident priest in all of North Korea. So the younger people, and even the elderly, when you think of it, they wouldn't even know. We're allowed to wear even our collar, or I can bless the medicine. But how much they know, I have no idea.
Father, as a missionary, how do you see Christ in your role in North Korea?
I'm glad you asked that question, because to me, going to North Korea is like a pilgrimage. Now that probably is strange for people who have all sorts of thoughts about North Korea, but it is holy ground. Now why would it be holy ground? It is because it's the blood of the martyrs. And so if you think of that, I'm going for a spiritual journey. And the simple thing is, where suffering is, Christ is there. And where Christ is there, we should be there. And of course we have the words of Pope Francis who say, go to the peripheries. And so I don't think, though, I'm doing any more than the other priest or religious or missionary would do if they were in the same position as myself.
You've been more than 57 years as a missionary. How would you say that you're, through this work in North Korea, that you have been transformed as a person? And how has your understanding of being a missionary been transformed as a consequence of your work in North Korea?
Well, one thing is you become very sensitive. And a person who's sensitive naturally has times when you feel discouraged, but you know that without Christ, without His help, you can do nothing. You learn your limitations, and sometimes, as I say to younger priests, I said, through our tears, we're able to see Christ better sometimes.
In fact, there was never a peace agreement. There was only an armistice which effectively ended the war. So for the Koreans, do they still see Korea as one?
Yes, they do, because Korea was always one up until the Yalta Agreement, when the country was divided at the 38th parallel. It had never happened. And I think every Korean, north or south, feels the division of their country and yearns, maybe in different ways, of course, to have Korea as one.
Will you see reconciliation in your lifetime?
I would certainly like to believe that. But I often feel now, coming back from the trips to North Korea, is that I'm going to be like Moses. I will see the promised land, but as a missionary, I'd always like to return. And I asked our guides, I said, when I retire, could I come here and teach some English? And they just look at me and shake their heads. But at least there is a strong Korean church here, a longing. The Cardinal Archbishop of Seoul, who is the administrator of Pyongyang, is always interested in sending priests, hoping that they will be able to go back to Pyongyang.
We've spoken a lot about your work, about the situation in North Korea politically and socially, but what about the situation of Christians? First of all, are there Christians? And secondly, what would be their life as Christians in North Korea?
Well, they would be in a very difficult situation. There is freedom of religion in their constitutions, but to practice it privately, I would hope there'd be some people left. But publicly, there are 2 Protestant churches, a Greek Orthodox church, and a Catholic association. But other than that, that's all there is. There's no active people that you see practicing religion. But I can tell you one story, is the fact that I was saying the rosary in the Jeep, and it broke. So I asked the driver if I could have some pliers to repair it. And he said, no, I will fix what you needed. So he took it and walked away, and he came back. When no one was there, he turns to me and says, oh, my grandmother had something like this. So with eyes of faith, I would believe that there would be some, certainly. And that's hopeful.
And that's hopeful. Father, what can we do?
Well, there's many things you can do, and I'm glad you did ask that question, is that one, through our prayers and sacrifices, because we have to have a change of mentality. Then comes interest and concern. And then hopefully the other phase would be to see if they can volunteer, to help with giving us the opportunity to give more medicine, to participate in programs like that, and some who would like to volunteer to go to North Korea with us.
You're 87. You're 87 years old. I can imagine you would be calling on young people and saying, "Come, we need your help. We're 5." I believe you said you're 5 people actually working in this mission.
5 priests, yes.
5 priests, and you could sure use some help, no?
We'd be most welcome to have anybody.
And it would be an adventure of a lifetime.
Yes, sirree, really.
Father Gerard Hammond, thank you very much for having been with us today in our program.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having been with us today on our program, Where God Weeps. And if you'd like to know more about the work of Father Gerard Hammond in North Korea, perhaps how you might be able to help, I would encourage you to look at the contact information at the end of this program. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.